Welcome to the Transform Session 2 in the Innovation in Digital Learning cohort. This screencast is an overview of the work you'll be doing in developing and leading a learning opportunity for other educators. Our focus is leadership and mentorship, and in this part of our cohort program, you'll be stepping up as a leader in your school and in the county. I want to give you an overview of our expectations for this work and give you some ideas and starting places for the work that you'll be doing. Following this video, you'll get to choose a path based on what type of PD opportunity you're most interested in building and exploring. The expectations vary throughout those 4 different options, but at their core, they all do the same work. Be sure to go through all of the information in this screencast and then in the second screencast you choose. And when you have issues or an idea, please be sure to reach out to your coach to collaborate and for support. You're welcome to make a copy of this slides presentation for you to take notes on and highlight things that stand out to you. Let's get started. So in overview, we're going to talk about general expectations for this work. We're going to talk about the tip chart connection. We're going to talk about best practices and engagement. And then we're going to finally talk about the tool selection, what thing you're going to actually teach to the adult learners. In the box up here, you can see the date that all of this work is due. Everything should be finished and submitted to Google Classroom by January 18th. Now, if you choose the option number 1, where you're presenting for an Embark session, you may or may not have your work actually finished by then in terms of having delivered the PD opportunity, but you should have all of your work finished, the whole session packaged and everything ready to go for you to submit by January 18th. If you have any questions about that, please touch base with your coach. They'll be more than happy to help. The whole point of doing this work with you and why we're giving over one whole session of our Transform year is that we want you to be comfortable taking a leadership role in your school and in the district. For this session, the product that you're going to be creating is a learning opportunity for other adults centered around a digital learning tool. This should be a tool or a resource that you have had some experience with. And the nice thing is that you have plenty of time so that if you see a new tool that you haven't tried yet, you can take a month, maybe a little more, to try out the tool, see how it works in your classroom, and decide if that's the right tool for you. And when you're looking at tools or when you're trying it out in your classroom, be sure that it's something that can be translated to other classes as well. So if you're a 7th grade social studies teacher, you want it to be something that could work in a 10th grade math class or in a 2nd grade class generally. Your tool that you choose should also have a big instructional tie-in. The whole point of why we're doing this work isn't so that you're using devices, just to use devices. We want there to be a point to it and a real reason for kids to use it so that they're actually learning. We want all of this work to be instructionally valuable, not just for you, but for the teachers who end up coming to your session or learning from your session. So based on the type of PD you develop, the expectations do have slight differences, and we'll get into those specifically in each of the videos for the different types. So each of the 4 different options that you have will have an individual video that you can look at to get a better idea. They'll all be short, so it'll give you an overview of what the expectations are for if you go down that path. Generally, all of them will incorporate best practices for teachers, and we'll highlight some of those in a minute. They're going to work in the 4 C's, and that's a big part of the profile of a South Carolina graduate, and that's really one of our important things to look at. It should be device and subject agnostic, and when we talk about device agnostic, that means that it's something that will work on both iPads and on Chromebooks, and we want something that isn't just for math teachers or isn't just for humanities teachers. And as I mentioned earlier, we really wanted to have an instructional component. That's the basis of all of this, that there is some valuable instruction going on. Last year, we spent a lot of time talking about and exploring the tip chart. This year, we want you to really think about using the tip chart as a guide for you, as well as a springboard for your instruction. As we discussed last year, There are times when you'll be at the entry level over on the left side, and times you'll be near ideal and target. This tool isn't a linear progression, but instead a resource to guide you toward more authentic learning opportunities for you and for your students at times that it makes sense. As you've heard last year with the tip chart, there are days where you'll be at one point and days where you'll be at another point, maybe even during the same lesson. It's important to have academic learning in your class as well as having authentic learning. So it just depends on where you are in learning and where you are in a unit. It's not a linear progression, as we've talked about before. As you're thinking about what you'll be teaching to the other educators and how you'll go about planning it, please utilize the tip chart. Part of your exit tickets, all options must have an exit ticket, and we'll highlight those in the individual videos. But all of the exit tickets will have a rating that is somehow based on the tip chart. You can take the exact language right from one of the tip chart strands. You can see the creativity and innovation one here, or adjust it to meet the needs that you have. I grabbed this one here, but you can focus on any one you like. So there are all 4 of them. You choose the one that you're interested in doing. But whatever the exit ticket is, it needs to connect somehow with the tip chart and the language and the information in the tip chart. And I'm not going to tell you what level it has to be. So when you're using this as a guide, I'm not saying that you have to focus on approaching or ideal target or developing or whatever. And yet we want you to keep what you've learned and heard in mind when you're doing this. So we want you to focus on choice, learning in different ways, participants connecting with the learning, and elements of making the learning and experience tailored to the participants. So this is not a time to stand up at the front of the room or have it just a thing where you're talking. We want it to be an opportunity for people to connect with learning. We want them to be able to reflect on what you're talking about. So take that awesome learning that you want to give to them and make sure that there's a way that they can connect with it. Your coach, as always, is a great resource on the tip chart. Keep in mind that the tip chart isn't the focus of your PD. It's just a tool, and it's one for you to utilize during planning and one for your participants to use as feedback at the end of your training session. So your session shouldn't be centered around the tip chart, and you probably shouldn't talk about the tip chart at all. It's more for you as a guide, and then at the end it should be somehow involved with the exit ticket part. And if you have questions about that, please feel free to reach out to your coach. So just like I asked you to do, make it an opportunity for people to connect with the learning, we're going to do the same thing for you. So I want you to think about some of the PD that you've attended in the past. Some of it's awesome. Some, well, at least there was food, I hope. How can you make sure that your PD falls into that first group of PD that people like, or that people really are able to get something out of? So I want you to take a second and envision a training or envision training or PD that you've gone to recently. What were some of the good things about it? Think about that same training or PD. What were some things that you would improve? Once you've come up with some of those ideas, I'd like you to go to the Padlet. The link is right up here. And it's also linked on the website that you got to this from. So I'd like you to think back to that training or PD that you went to recently and add some comments. So share with us the things that you liked about the training, the ways that you were able to connect with it, and also share some areas that the presenter could have made things a little bit better. Please pause the video and add those 2 things to the Padlet. Hopefully you were able to see some ideas that other people had, and hopefully some of those follow along with the ideas of best practice that we're hoping that you'll be able to take on for your PD that you're going to develop and implement. So things we want to see are areas where you're able to make engaging activities for your participants. We want to see thoughtful planning. Think about not just sit and get. So we want people to be able to talk to each other. Maybe if you can, have them getting up and moving around. If you're doing a screencast, that's obviously going to be a little bit different for you, but there are ways that you can build in opportunities for people to connect with other people or to build in opportunities for reflection, so they're not just listening to you talk for 20 minutes without any action on their own part. We want to have challenging content that people can still connect with. We want something that they can take away from your session and feel confident that they can use it in their class tomorrow if they wanted to. We want opportunities for meaningful reflection and processing so their work can be internalized. So again, we want people reflecting and figuring out how the work that you've done, this hard work of developing this PD opportunity, how can they take that and turn that around to work for their classroom. Options for communication and collaboration. And we really want that 4 C's work in here. So thinking about the profile of an SC grad and thinking about that framework for 21st century learning. All of those topics that I just brought up are all in the notes in the presentation. So if you've made a copy or if you haven't yet, all of those are in there if those are things you want to look back at or try and focus around. And once you've used this in your PD opportunity for other adults, maybe some of these ideas might be transferable to your classroom with your students. And which ones of those might you want to focus on bringing into your lessons during the school day? So just because they're best practices when you're working with adults doesn't mean that they're not best practices when you're working with students as well. So that's an area for you maybe to reflect on ways that your instruction in your classroom can grow as well. When we're talking about instructional tools that you can use in the classroom, there are so many options, and it can certainly get overwhelming. Instead of getting frustrated, let's try and think about some of your options. So a great way to think about what your choices are is think about what you use in your classroom. And it's not only what you use in your classroom, but think about what your students really connect with when you're working in your classroom. So is there a tool that has worked really well in the past, or have your students been asking you to try something, or have you seen from another teacher that either works in your school or someone that you connected with through the cohorts or maybe on social media that they've tried and it's worked really well? One of my favorite go-to places to look is on Twitter or on Pinterest. Both of them have really great opportunities and tools selections and ideas for you to get started. If you're struggling with working through all of these choices and possibilities, talk to your coach. Your coach is one of the best ways to find support with this. You can also read some EdTech blogs, and I will post some on the website. You can think about using a Google tool. Just because it's not necessarily a new tool doesn't mean you can't think about using it in a new way or thinking about it, using it in a better way. You can look at education technology tools to get started, things that you've heard about last year during our class or things that you found on your own. Another favorite way to get ideas is to touch base with a colleague. So you can ask someone that works down the hall or someone that you've connected with online, which is a great way of building up your professional learning network or your PLN. So if you use Twitter or you use Pinterest or you use Facebook, there are a lot of good teacher groups on there, and that's a great way of building your PLN to get more ideas and to energize your instruction. And that can be so beneficial, not just for this project, but for you as an educator overall. When you're thinking about the tool that you're going to use, be sure that you understand the tool. Not only will you be instructing people on the functions of the tool, but you're also going to share with them how to incorporate it into their instruction. And that second part is really the important part. So not only do you understand the mechanics and the functionality of whatever tool it is, but that you also understand the educational implementation of it. So how can you use this instructionally in your class? And if it's new to you, like we talked about before, that's fine. You can totally use a new tool. Just give yourself some time to understand it, use it, and know how it works in your class and the great things about it, but also if there's any limitations in it. Because it's important to know and be able to share what limitations there are so that people don't sort of get themselves down a dead-end road. And that's something that we've run into before. So some tools that seem great end up having huge holes in it, and you only find that out when you're using it. And oftentimes it ends up when you're using it in front of your class of 35 and then your lesson doesn't work. So you don't want to recommend a tool and then have someone try it and then have it not work out because of a limitation that you could have shared with them. So try and give yourself enough time to play around with these tools so that you really understand the way that they work. And as I said, this is really a point that you want to touch base with your coach. Make sure that you and your coach are talking about what tool you want to use and how it's going to look for your training. So we've talked a lot here, and some important takeaways that I want you to understand are that we really want you to work with your coach on this. This isn't a part where we're dumping this huge project on you. You have a lot of support, and we really want you and your coach to work on this together. If you feel like you can do it on your own and you're good to go, then by all means get started and see where it takes you. But touch base with your coach every once in a while just to let them know where you're at and make sure that they know that you're in a good place. So whether you need a lot of support or you don't need any at all, please make sure you're touching base with your coach so that they know where you're at and they can give you the support or not support that you need. It's due January 18th on Google Classroom, so you're going to go to that same Google Classroom that we have for all of Transform. There'll be an assignment there. You're going to turn in all of your work, including participant feedback if you haven't yet. And the only people that shouldn't have participant feedback are the people who choose option number 1 to do their work with the Embark group. You're going to put all of the stuff, any handouts that you do, any slides, presentations, anything into one Google Drive folder, and then you're going to share it so that anyone in CCSD can view it. And then you're going to take the link to the folder and turn that in on Google Classroom. And there'll be instructions, very specific ones, on how to do that. So you have those 4 options that are up here. So you're going to present at the Embark meeting. You can present at a school-based PD. You can record a screencast, or you can think of something that I haven't thought of. If you have a good idea that doesn't fit into one of these things, please let your instructor know and they can work with you on coming up with an alternate plan for you. Once you decide which of these 4 options you're going to do, please go back to the Transform website. You're going to click Session 2 and then watch whatever screencast it is that you're drawn to. So whether it's option 1, 2, 3, or 4, you choose that video, watch it, and then you can get started on the work that you plan to do. I hope that this screencast just helped you understand what our expectations are for this assignment and for this work, and I really hope that you get really great experience out of this and are able to move forward in a positive direction. Thank you, and please watch your next video.